a living history production.
I'm Matt McLachlan.
And I'm Pete Smith.
We're battlefield historians who love nothing better than getting out and walking the ground where great battles in history took place.
And now we'd like you to come with us. Every week, BattleWalks will take you to one of the great battlefields of Europe.
As we walk the ground, we'll dig through the pages of history. We'll uncover the secrets of the battlefields, and most importantly, we'll tell the stories of the people who fought and died there.
Welcome to BattleWalks.
Hello everybody, welcome to BattleWalks. I'm Pete Smith, no Matt today, as this is another of my out and about on the ground podcasts. Today we're back on my home turf, France and the Somme, and we're going to be talking about an action that took place on the 18th of November in 1916. Now, the 18th of November is the last day of the Battle of the Somme, a battle that began on the 1st of July. It's the fighting at a location known as Frankfort Trench, and which is on the Redan Ridge. And it's fighting that will continue until the 25th of November, so beyond the end date of the Battle of the Somme, and that's what makes it rather interesting. It's an action that I've known about for many years, as my grandfather served in the 32nd Division. He was in the Royal Field Artillery, and he had many happy memories of friendships with men of the Highland Light Infantry, and it's some of those men, again, that we're going to be talking about. But the final catalyst that really, I suppose, highlighted this action to me was a strange set of coincidences a few months ago. And I was looking at some old magazines that I'd found, and in two of them I found articles about this battle at Frankfort Trench. And so it started the thought in my mind. And then later on in the day I was opening up an old book, and a newspaper article from the 1960s fell out, and it was also about the same action. And I thought, right, that's it. This has got to be something that we'll cover in one of the podcasts. So here we are. So where am I? Well, I'm in a location known as the Sunken Road, just outside of Beaumont-Hamel. Now, it's a location we've been to before in other podcasts, very much part of the fighting on the 1st of July during the Battle of the Somme. It's where Malins filmed a group of men of the 2nd Lancashire Fusiliers standing here waiting to go over the top. Very moving sequence of film. And he also filmed the detonation of one of those great mines on the 1st of July from here as well. So it's a location that lots of people come to. Well, we're not here really for that. We're here because it's almost in the starting positions for the fighting that will take place later on. This was all taken, the sunken lane here and the whole area around here, the German trenches to our right, taken on the 13th of November during the second attempt to take the village of Beaumont-Hamel, which is directly in front of us. The sunken lane is to our left-hand side, and behind us is a memorial to the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. All of these things I've talked about before, but just to give you an idea of where we are. So we're going to be walking up the sunken lane, and normally when we're here we're looking down it because we like to get that imagery that Malins reproduce that imagery of Malins. This time we're just using it as a starting off point, and we're going to be walking up the sunken lane, and I'm going to leave my car here. This is the best place to leave my car. So we've got the date. We know the date is the 18th of November. We're going to head up the lane, and I'll talk more as we start walking. So let's talk about conditions to start off with. The landscape had been destroyed. It's a morass from the fighting both on the 1st of July, 13th of November, and before and ongoing. The weather has changed. Obviously, 1st of July, beautiful summer's day. We're now into late autumn, early winter. It's not particularly pleasant. It's sleeting. It's raining. It's drizzle. It's mud. And so very, very unpleasant. And as we walk up the sunken road, on the right-hand side we have bushes and trees, and the right-hand side is the side that's facing the German lines, and the left-hand side back towards our lines, and that's clear of bushes and trees, much as it was at the time, interestingly. The Redan Ridge is a very open ridge. It's unusual if you're used to coming to the Somme and you've not been onto some of these open ridges. It's the trees around my village. We have trees, and that's kind of what we get used to expecting to see. And these the chalk slopes, the downland. Well, it still is the chalk downland, but this is very much an open landscape. So if we look half right across, then we're looking towards where we're going, towards Frankfort Trench. We can't quite see it because it's on the top. It's not a reverse slope position, but nearly. It's right on the top of one of the highest points of the Redan Ridge. So also to the right and slightly behind us, as we get to the top of the sunken lane, it's now no longer sunken. We're out in the open, and we're going to turn right, and that's what we're doing now. We're just turning right, and on our right hand side we can see Beaumont Hamel, so we get a nice view down into Beaumont Hamel. And so we're now heading slightly towards Beaumont Hamel, and we're going to get a cemetery. It's just coming up on our left hand side, and that's Redan Ridge Cemetery number 2. It contains the graves of 250 men, and 100 of those men are unidentified. We're not going to actually go into the cemetery, even though I'm very tempted to go and have a sit down and go and have a look. We're just going to carry on walking past it. So I'm walking down the road. I'm just going to stop for a minute because I need to turn my notes over here. Okay, so as we carry on walking towards the village, then we'll cross over an area known as Beaumont Trench, and that was actually captured on the 13th of November. And then after that, we're really starting to walk towards no man's land. There may be some outpost positions here. So here we are. This is a very muddy section, I have to say here. A lot of muddy. We've got a lot of vehicles out on the fields at the moment. I'm recording this in late October, and so the conditions here are not very similar to, I suppose, the timescale that we're going to be talking about. It's muddy. The fields have mainly been ploughed. Some have got green fertiliser crops in other words, they're going to be ploughed in. Others have still got the stubble of the wheat, and we have a little bit of sugar beet still in the ground. But the great thing about all of that, it means that we can actually walk across these fields. These fields that we're not going to be really damaging anything. So I've got my wellies on today. So we're now walking down back towards into the village itself. And we've got a few of the farms and houses, and then we're going to be turning left. And there are more trees here, trees, and the road again is starting becoming sunken as we drop into the valley. Beaumont Hamel is in the valley, but just before we get into the heart of the village, we're going to be turning left again, and that's as we reach a location known as Wagon Road. So that's just going to take me another few minutes, so I'm just going to have a pause for a minute. So here we are, just walking up Wagon Road now. It's a very sunken road, very sunken. We've got well beyond my height on the right-hand side bank, and the same on the left-hand side. Lots of trees here, and it has been a shelter on the 13th. The attacks on the 13th here with the 51st Highland Division and the 2nd Division, which had fought here, and in fact they tried to get beyond here. So the German lines, as we walk up Wagon Road, the German lines are on our right-hand side again. This would have been no man's land, and it had been a place of safety as the men had assaulted from the British front line on our left-hand side, crossed over Wagon Road, and in fact some assaulted from Wagon Road heading up towards Frankfort Trench, and it was here that they came back to as they were forced back because this was an unsuccessful attack any further here on the 13th of November when the fighting took place here. The 32nd Division, which is going to be brought here to take over from the 51st Highland Division and the 2nd Division. The 32nd Division it has been rested. It's been out of the Somme sector, so it's had a little rest, and it's going to move in. And it's interesting, of the 12 infantry battalions within the division, 7 of them were actually PALS battalions. And so we have the 15th Highland Light Infantry, which was the Glasgow City Tramways, the 16th Highland Light Infantry, and that's the one that's going to interest us, was formed from mainly men from the Boys Brigade. within the town of Glasgow itself. The 17th Highland Light Infantry from the Chamber of Commerce, mainly ex-pupils of the Glasgow Academy. And then we have the 16th Northumberland Fusiliers, Newcastle Commercials, and the 15th and 16th Lancashire Fusiliers were from Salford, and the 11th Border Regiment. Another one that is going to interest us is the Lonsdale Pals, which were raised by Lord Lonsdale. So all of these battalions were raised locally and are known as Pals battalions. So what are the problems that they're going to face as they move into these positions in preparation for their attack? Well, incorrect positions. So in other words, the locations that the 51st Division, the Scottish Division, the positions that they thought they were not the correct positions, and the landscape's absolutely damaged beyond belief, destroyed landscape, lack of reconnaissance because of the date that they're going to get here, and the fact that they're also not going to be using their own artillery. It's going to be the 51st Divisional Artillery which will be supporting them. And one of the worst things that's going to happen is that their attack orders won't reach some of them until 4:30 in the morning of the attack, and the attack is going to be at 6:10. So I stopped while I was saying all that. I'm going to continue walking up Wagon Road. So British front line is on our left, and Munich Trench on our right, and we're in no man's land at the moment. The assault is going to be launched at 6:10 in sleet and snow, and the 16th Highland Light Infantry had only just reached their jumping off trenches 10 minutes before attacking, and they had no hot food for 15 hours, so they were already in a state even before they attacked. The 97th Brigade, which is part of the division, one of the brigades in the division, is going to use all four of its battalions to attack Munich and Frankfort Trenches, which are both on our right-hand side. And what we're doing as we walk up this sunken lane on Wagon Road, we're just waiting till we get out of the sunken lane so we can turn right, because what we're going to do at the top here, we are actually going to follow their attack across the field. The great thing here, as I said, is because it's now all walkable, there's no crops in any of these fields that you can damage, we can actually follow the attack itself. So at 6:10 they attack, all four battalions attacking together. Support barrage was 4, so the artillery supporting them wasn't particularly good, and they start having problems straight away. If the barrage isn't good, they come under machine gun fire. D Company was very lucky. D Company of the 16th Highland Light Infantry, their barrage was excellent, and so they were able to, so I'm just turning right now, and we're now following that attack. They were able to advance, and they crossed both Munich Trench, took Munich Trench in their sector, and then got into Frankfort Trench and held a portion of that. And that was their final objective. So they'd done exactly what they were supposed to do, but sadly they were the only ones. So it's predominantly D Company that had got across and got into Munich Trench. And then Frankfort Trench, the final objective. A party of the Lonsdales, this is the battalion, the 11th Border Regiment, known as the Lonsdales. They had also suffered through the lack of barrage, but a number of them had also got through, and they also dropped into Frankfort Trench and helped the Highland Light Infantry who were there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop again for a minute as we cross this paddock, so I have to keep watching where I'm going. So here I am, still crossing the field, just heading towards the cemetery itself, and that's where we're walking to, Frankfort Trench British Cemetery, and this is where we want to be. This is where we're going to stop and tell the rest of the story. So the 2nd Battalion King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry will be on our left, literally, as I'm walking across here. Now they're covering the left flank of the attack, and they had a terrible time. There was a strong point in Munich Trench, so they didn't even take Munich Trench. So they're effectively the left flank is open as they carry on towards Frankfort Trench, and they retreated back to Wagon Road. Did the 2nd Battalion King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry. There are also a few stragglers managed to make it to Frankfort Trench as well. So we're just coming up now to Frankfort Trench British Cemetery. It's an unusual cemetery, this one, because it's hedged. In this area, they tend to have rubble walls around them, but this one hasn't got a rubble wall around it. It's got a hedge around it. Cross of Sacrifice is on the nearest side to us, and that's where we're going to go through the gateway near to the Cross of Sacrifice. Across the other side, I'm just going to sit down here now. So, sitting on the little seat beside the gardener's shed in the cemetery itself. I find it very moving to sit here while I'm telling these stories, because I'm surrounded by the men who died fighting on this ridge, on the Redan Ridge, and very specifically, it's the men who died trying to get to this point, and those that tried to help them, the men that were trapped at this point. So it's a moving cemetery to be close to the men that we're going to be talking about. There are 150 burials in here. 127 of them are named burials. Now, unusually, you'd expect us to find here the defenders of Frankfort Trench, but they're not here. They would be buried by the Germans, or in fact taken prisoner, because this is going to be an unsuccessful defence of this trench, as as some of you will have realised already. And their graves couldn't be located, those that died here after the war. So most of them are either missing, or they were buried by the Germans and not in this cemetery here. The other thing to point out is, if you've ever been here, and I would say that you ought to come. I think everybody should come here. It's a very different part of the Battle of the Somme. You'll need to bring your, almost whatever time of the year it is. It can get very, very cold up here. It's quite desolate, and during the winter, the wind really whips across here, and it's actually whipping across here tonight. My hands are freezing, so it's a very open landscape. So, the guys that are trapped here, and so how many men do end up being trapped here? Well, for the 16th Highland Light Infantry, it's 3 officers and 60 other ranks, and 10 of those are wounded. For the 11th Borderers, the Lonsdale Battalion, it's 3 officers and 60 other ranks, 23 of those are wounded, and then just 1 officer of the 2nd King's Own Yorkshire Light Infantry and 3 men managed to make it here as well, and they were all wounded as well. So that means the total is 130 men that are trapped here. There's been some studious work in recent years by a chap called Chris Bates, who's a friend of mine, and he's analysed the Red Cross German POW records, and he's brought the final total to 145, very accurate research work, and so we can now increase that from 130 to 145 men who were fighting in this trench. So, for some time, neither side was aware that this group of men were trapped and holding the trench. There were 2 dugouts here that they'd taken, and so they occupied those. They had 4 Lewis guns and limited ammunition. And very cleverly, what they decided to do was hand over all of their 303 ammunition to the Lewis guns, and then to pick up German rifles and ammunition and use those as their individual weapons. And that meant that the Lewis guns had more ammunition. They also realised that they may be here for a while, so they start looking at where they can get water from, because most of the men have already drunk their water, and so they're looking at shell holes, and they start organising the boiling of water, and also looking at how much food they've got, and they realise that they've not got a lot, and so they're also taking anything that they can find from the dead in the area. Now, if you're wondering how we knew how many men were here, it's because 2 men were able to sneak back. A Sergeant Major Johnson and Private Dixon of the 11th Borderers, they managed to actually get back and give those figures of how many men were trapped here. So when we become aware that they're trapped, we know how many men. Contact was also made with an aeroplane flying over of the 15th Squadron, Royal Flying Corps, and they were able to be signalled from the plane to say that help was on its way. So on the 6th day, so they're going to be here. They're going to hold this trench for 8 days under consistent attack. And one of the heaviest attacks took place on the 6th day when the Germans launched a powerful attack on all fronts, or on the front, should I say, and the flanks. And it was repelled, but at cost. But they took 8 prisoners from the Germans, so it shows that it was very much hand-to-hand fighting. 8 Germans taken prisoner. Also on the 6th day, a relief was attempted by the 96th Brigade, and they brought up the 16th Lancashire Fusiliers and the 2nd Inniskilling Fusiliers, and they're going to attempt to relieve them on the 6th day. So that previous account was the 4th day, so this is the 6th day. And it's going to be 3 companies of the 16th Lancashire Fusiliers and 1 company of the 2nd Inniskilling Fusiliers. But they couldn't penetrate beyond Munich Trench. They tried very hard, but they didn't get any further than that. And in fact, by 1620, they had fallen back, and they started at 15:30, so mid-afternoon during the attack. Their casualties amounted to 224 men. And 7 officers, which was over 60% of the attacking force, became casualties. And so you can see how difficult it's starting to become when you're losing that kind of numbers of men in an attempt to free the ones that are trapped in the German lines. By the time of the 7th day, things were getting really tough for them. They had no food, and none of them had eaten for some considerable time. The garrison has reduced considerably. Nearly most of them are wounded. In fact, by the end of the fighting, only 15 will remain unwounded. And so on the 7th day, the Germans sent, under a flag of truce, a white flag, sent a message whether they would surrender. They ignored it. They just totally ignored it and carried on. But by the following day, on the 25th of November, the Germans attacked again, and they completely overwhelmed the position. And the remaining survivors were taken prisoner, and as I said, only 15 remained unwounded, and they could hardly stand through lack of water and food. And so on the 25th, the Somme offensive ends, which is extraordinary considering that we always quote that the 18th of November is the final day of the Battle of the Somme, but here we have a group of men holding out to the 25th of November, so this was truly the end of the Somme offensive. Now, why do we not know about it? Well, it's interesting, isn't it? We don't know about it, I suppose, is because they did surrender, and it wasn't a success. So it didn't really become really well known until after the war, when the awards started to be given out, because it was decided that this almost forlorn hope, this siege, this holding this section of the line, really needed that some of the men that had been here, who had been then prisoners of war until the end of the war, needed to be awarded. And it was predominantly the 16th Highland Light Infantry that took the awards, because they put their names forward actually for the awards. And so I'll just list the awards that were offered because or that were received, because it's extraordinary and very sad in some ways. There were 2 posthumous MIDs mentioned in dispatches. Now, they had been put forward for the Victoria Cross, and one of the sad aspects of the Victoria Cross is that you can be awarded it posthumously. In other words, you can die in the act and still be awarded the Victoria Cross. But all of the other medals, you have to survive the action, and these chaps both didn't survive the action. So the only other award they can give them is an MID, a mention in dispatches, and that was their award, because that's the only one that could be given to them as a posthumous award. So very sad that those 2 Victoria Crosses were not awarded, because it would have also lifted this action, and it would be a lot more well known. 1 DSC, Distinguished Service Cross, was awarded, 2 military crosses, 11 DCMs, Distinguished Conduct Medals, and 22 military medals were awarded for the action and the fighting here. Eventually it would be described by Gough, commander of the 5th Army, and it's the 5th Army that was fighting here, as a magnificent example of soldierly qualities for the men that fought here. It is an amazing action, and one that should be better known. So I hope you've enjoyed just a quick overview of the fighting that took place here. I'm just going to quote some books if you want to read further on it, where I got some of my information from, because it is worthwhile tracking down. Redan Ridge, The Last Stand by Peter Weston. I can highly recommend that. These are articles from magazines. So the Frankfort Trench Last Stand, November from the 18th to the 25th, 1916, and that's by Chris Bates, and that was in Medal News. Somme Footnote, The Struggle for Frankfort Trench by Peter Simpkins, and that was in the Imperial War Museum Review number 9. That's some years ago now. And then a book that actually my grandfather had, it was in his collection, The History of the 16th Highland Light Infantry by Thomas Chalmers, and that was published in the 1920s. And just say my copy's got the signatures in the front of a lot of the men that fought in the battalion, so nice to have. So yes, if you want to read more, go and see if you can track down any of those. So until next time, I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you again soon.